Well, good morning, everyone. This is John Haller. We're doing a joint prophecy update today. Again, this is because I'm home recovering from Achilles tendon surgery. Hopefully, I will be next Sunday. I will be back at FBC, and I'll be doing it, I guess, by myself. But today, I'm pleased to be joined by Mark Sutherland of the Sutherland Report from the UK, and Brian Schrauger from Tipping Point, who lives in Israel. So, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, John.
Okay, well, let's
Good
jump
morning,
right.
John. Good morning, Brian.
Yeah, let's jump right into it. I don't even know where to begin. I suppose that maybe the first place to start would be with regard to what's actually going on in the Middle East. I have a screen that I want to share. This has been as you know, this is a very difficult thing to deal with Trump, and the responses to Trump are all over the place. It's a start and stop. I saw a post this morning, or just a short time ago, from the Emmaus Wire, good group of people. You should follow them on X, and I think some of them actually live up in the Golan. And they were saying, pray for everything. Something might happen. And Trump put this up yesterday. I'll read the post from his True Social account. The USA is locked and loaded and ready to go against the Islamic Republic of Iran at levels of military terror, strength, and power not seen since World War II. Despite this, we have just been asked by Iran and other Middle Eastern countries to hold off any attack that the perimeters of a deal have been agreed to. This would include the immediate, complete, and total opening of the Hormuz Strait and end to Iran's nuclear threat. Based on this request, I have agreed for the future benefit of the world, and likewise the survival of a successful and prosperous Iran, to cancel the attack, subject to being able to rapidly make a deal. The country of Israel joins me in this commitment. Get to work, everybody, and get it done. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Part of that response came from let's see, I think this was one of the things that led to Trump saying this. Excuse me, I got to stop sharing one screen, go share another. There we go. And this was a statement by the Saudi Arabia. This was published by their on their social media. His Royal Highness MBS, Crown Prince and Prime Minister held a phone call with President Trump to discuss developments in the region. His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, stressed the need to prioritize dialogue to reduce escalation and the importance of making every possible effort to achieve calm that paves the way for diplomatic solutions, preserves the region's security and stability, and prevents a wider conflict whose repercussions would affect regional and international security and stability. So anyway, this is where we stand, and let's start with your comments. Brian or Mark, go ahead.
Mark,
Brian, go ahead, sir.
My feeling here is, here we go again. Round what?
13, I believe, if somebody's counting.
We have cycled in and out of this kind of rhetoric over and over and over again. I did see the report yesterday that Israel had agreed to join in an attack, and my heart sank. Not because I don't want to see Iran defeated. We all want to see that. But just the return to hostilities for Israel would be a heavy burden. The country has really paid a big price in the fight so far. And there is a very strong felt need for respite. At the same time, there is a almost universal recognition that the Iranian regime does need to be taken care of. So, yeah, that's how I'm looking at it right now.
Brian, I think my first initial thought after what you've just said is the fact that where Israel is on the front line of those of us that think in a particular way of sanity, and I, to some extent, can understand the feelings there, and particularly with what everyone in Israel has been through over the last number of months. And yes, this stop-start does not help. But what I also find interesting, I've said this before, it's like where John quite rightly is bringing up all this information, there is an American filter, then we come to the European filter, and then we come to the Israeli filter. And that's why it's such a privilege that all three of us can sit down and have this conversation, because you also know the political pressure that's going on in America. Certain individuals, as much as I'll be profoundly unpopular with certain individuals, where we look at, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Massey and all that, we've got that. We've got the lunatic left on this side of the pond, and I know we'll come to other issues. And then with all the pressure that is going on within Israel, and I know John is going to bring up some other issues, and where your brave young men and women have been fighting, and people need a break and need a rest, let alone civilian-wise. I just want to underline that about 35,000 million times, really. Thank you.
And there's political pressure here too, because elections are coming up in October, and there are those who think that Netanyahu might just do anything to postpone those elections. Again, the political rhetoric here is just off the charts. It's very, very intense. So yeah, there are a lot of politics going on here too.
So Brian, tell us what. So I appreciate I want to go back to Mark for just a second. Mark, you mentioned European view versus Israeli view versus American view. Personally, I find the whole process very tiring.
Yes.
And it's interesting. So I'll just say this. So when I look at different accounts that I follow and that type of thing, you will get. There's an Israeli lawyer that I follow. His name is Mark Zell. He seems like a very bright guy. And immediately he says, oh, Trump is just trolling them. Trump is fine. This is brilliant. This is brilliant strategy. He's fooling the Iranians. And I'm like, I don't see the Iranians being fooled by any of this. They use it to their advantage. And it's time that we stop with this nonsense that Trump is playing 6D chess that the rest of us don't understand. A lot of us have a very deep understanding of the world. So do something or just be quiet, because the Iranians twist everything, and they have missiles left. They have drones left. There was an attack on liquefied natural gas tankers at a port in Egypt. And immediately everybody says, oh, that's a false flag by Israel. Israel did the attack because I don't know why they want to do this, but because Israel makes money. They just signed a massive multi-billion-dollar deal with Egypt. Did they not, Brian?
I don't know.
Okay, they did. It was about a $40 billion deal. So they're not going to nuke their own or destroy their own revenue stream that they have set up with Egypt. And this is clearly it either came from Iranian militias in Iraq or came directly from Iran. And this is Iran sending a message all the time. Every missile is a message, in my view, and to achieve something political. So now, Mark, I want to ask you, in Europe, you're in the UK. You're under occupation in the UK. What's the view in Europe as to all of this? And I know that there's a wide range of views, but the majority view, what do you think is in Europe
Well,
about this?
it's rather interesting, isn't it, when we've seen these certain incidents that have just happened within Spain. So I'm just gonna lay this out spiritually. First of all, if you have no understanding spiritually of what is going on, then I would say to people, you need to wake up. If you are coming out with a left-wing view that is bashing Israel after time after time after time, then God says, it's not being simplistic, says, I've had enough. And I will come against you. And then it's this whole thing, replacement theology. The John, what I believe with what I'm witnessing, what we're seeing is, of course, the rise of anti-Semitism within this country, elsewhere, and because of certain rhetoric being just permanently ramped up. We've then got an extreme here, John, to me, where because I'm privileged to sit down with you two and others at various points, and we're trying to educate ourselves even more. I have to say this, since the 7th of October, it has brought, and I'm not telling Brian to suck any eggs, or you, John, on this, has brought many of us who thought we understand sort of certain things, we haven't. And we have then done our best to then educate ourselves over pre the foundation of Israel in 1948, pre that, and then since then, and to get ourselves in a mindset of what's going on, let alone discussing Oslo, and then all the fallout of that, which we will then come to. What am I saying? What I'm saying is that what I see, John, answer your question, is people, I believe, that are not. Again, it comes to emotion. They're reacting from emotion, and they are reacting from facts that do not exist. So suddenly, when the UN is turning around and going, actually, we've got our figures wrong in Gaza. Yes, because you believe the Gazan Health Authority, and we have been screaming and shouting about this since once the IDF went in. I think behind the public rhetoric, I find this irresponsible. I'll just say this. As you know, there's a new prime minister that we've had now, the 7th one in 10 years. We're catching up with the Italians in how many times that they changed their leaders. But the key is this, is that when you get a new defense secretary, Wes Streeting, within minutes turning around and denouncing Israel, when you then have turned around and got a prime minister in this country who's turning around and saying, well, I think the Labour Party could do better, when suddenly we're looking at potentially people like Diane Abbott brought back into government. I can go over that later. But then the next thing it'd be like, oh, let's bring Jeremy Corbyn back. Wow. What am I? I can see it happening. I'm not being clever, but I do believe that there is judgment going on. I look at what's happening within Europe, within fires here as well. And I'm not just dressing this up for the sake of it. There are true supporters of Israel and the Jewish people within Europe, because they're also educated themselves in regard to history, which I don't really have to go over, because sadly it's not too far away that when we said never again, here we are, and people have stoked this. So John, I believe it's understanding history, and that suddenly we have got a progressive collegiate. There was a big meeting in April. Our previous foreign secretary, previous deputy prime minister, a man called David Lammy, let's try and find the brain cell where that individual is concerned, where suddenly he's shaking hands with Sanchez, at the Spanish prime minister, or the excuse of a Spanish prime minister, who's come out with so much anti-Israel rhetoric, along with other people that then come out with that. And I don't have to tell you about some of the history of Spain, whether we go back to the Spanish Inquisition and all the rest, but there is so much to discuss there, plus within our own country. So there is this socialist collectivism that is going on, and also with Alex Soros even attending that meeting. I'll stop here, John, to say that the spiritual battle within Europe, is this is ramping up. And within this is my personal opinion, that within the church, the push for replacement theology and for people being clear about this subject, sadly, it's extremely murky. This is not. I'll just end with this. This isn't poor me. I don't think I don't get any phone calls going, why don't you come and talk to our church? I don't. You've got to be joking. No, not one. But that, I believe, is the move. There are people that are fully supportive of Israel and what has happened since the events of the 7th of October and also well before, who have an understanding of history, and that grieves them, because we go for the Saturday people, then we go for the Sunday people. And I don't have to educate any of you about what you are seeing that's going on in Europe, even in regard to demographic change and people movements. Okay.
I have to throw in here, Mark, how wonderful it is that while the Church of England and the government in the UK is largely spouting anti-Semitic or anti-Israel rhetoric, that God has seen fit to raise up a voice this last week with perhaps the most powerful and remarkable defense of Israel I have heard. And it's an unexpected voice. Boy George, the pop singer, has released a song called We Will Dance Again, and everybody needs to listen to this song. He has taken a stand in his culture and in the culture at large that is incredibly courageous and clear. And you know what? Israel loves him for it. Jews around the world, Jews in Israel, are absolutely amazed to hear this voice, as am I. And I just have to say, it's great to see what Jesus said, that if the people weren't throwing pedals down when he rode the donkey into Jerusalem, that the stones would cry out. Okay, God's going to raise up voices that we don't expect, and it is just so wonderful to see that happen.
Just quickly, Brian, John, on that, you are right, because he is crossing so many cross-cultural, so many opinion groups, and I think that's the point you're saying. At the age of I think now 64, 65, but also the fact that he is now withdrawn.
Really?
He is 64, 65, I think.
Oh my goodness!
But I know how dates the rest of us. But he has withdrawn from playing King Herod in Jesus Christ Superstar in the West End of London because of potentially the abuse, etc., that he would get. He is entitled. This is where we've got, and I think this illustrates what John was saying about we're entitled to our opinion. We're entitled to express that. Of course, we're not when it seems to fit the wrong narrative. But Brian, I hear you very, very, very loudly.
Well, if you follow him on X, as I think everyone should now, and we should be praying for him for a number of reasons. But he noted, I believe, just yesterday, if not today, that he lost his record producer label. The man producing his records, and he named him on X, said that he would not produce that song. He would not put it on an album. So Boy George said, "Fine, goodbye."
Well, I'd also say this, that that within the arts over here, which is unfortunately left-wing leaning, along with so many of these opinions, along with that other well-known Spanish actor who was once in a Bond film that seems to speak out of his backside on a regular occasion, there is also, if you do not fit that, then the arts will come against you as well. Then you will lose work or you won't be employed. So yeah, I'll be quiet. Sorry, John.
Yeah, this is his. Is that not playing? I thought I just have the audio version of this, and he is.
Well, that's all there is. There's only an audio. I put up something, but it's worth listening to because the words are just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, I saw somebody who took and put interspliced video from so the what was her name? Like Shana Yoki Loki or something like that, the one of the gals who was killed, raped and killed and on October 7th, they had her dancing at the Nova Festival site.
Wow.
And the whole thing was "We Will Dance Again." And it's a very powerful thing. And so we can disagree with Boy George on his lifestyle and his religious choice and that type of thing. But I think, Brian, you're right that, here comes a voice that maybe we didn't expect. And he's actually doing, he did pretty, I mean, it's very powerful because I listened to it. There was a place where he said, he's just said a phrase, and I was in my mind, I was like, well, if I was doing this, the next thing I would say, it was exactly what he said in the song, because I have very strong opinions about that and everything. So, Brian, let's go back to you, because we're talking about, so we're on an election clock. So we have all these people, Trump's doing great, Trump stinks. It's all over the place. And I remember a few years ago, we were in Israel for a media summit, and we were down at the Knesset, and that was the day they were forming the current government. And we met people, we saw Ben-Gvir was speaking and all this. And it's amazing because Israel had been through 5 elections in 2 years, I think.
Yes.
Similar to what and Mark, I think you're like 7 prime ministers in the last 10 years now, I think, in the UK.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's great because we're totally stable here in the United States. No problem, no conflict politically or anything. He said sarcastically. But so, Brian, the issue, and it's amazing to me that we're sitting here and the Netanyahu government is held together. It's extremely divisive. When I look at Israeli politics, sometimes I think it's such a blessing of Israeli politics is that it makes American politics seem very normal and boring by comparison. So what are the major issues? So I'll lead it up to this with this question, Brian, because there has been a tremendous amount of conflict internally in Israel about the Haredi draft issue.
Yeah.
The Israeli Defense Forces are tired. They are stretched thin. The reserves, I hear that the rate of reserves actually coming up when they're called has fallen, which is a concerning thing because it does not appear to me that you're done in Gaza. I don't care what Trump tweets or his people on his board of peace say, but it seems like that's still an issue. It seems like Hezbollah in Lebanon is still an issue, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But the Haredi draft issues, so there was a law that was passed recently, if I'm getting the sequence correctly. It seems like it was about 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago, they passed a law that said the Haredi have to show up. They won't get immunity from prosecution or whatever if they don't show up for draft. Or no, it was to give them immunity from showing up. It passed the Knesset, and then the Israeli courts got involved and said, no, you can't do that because it's discriminatory and unfair. And it really is discriminatory and unfair. And you see these protests of Haredi, like they're just viciously defending their lack of service. Well, we study the Torah, so that defends Israel. And it's just, in my view, it's complete nonsense. And even a lot of Orthodox Jews that we know totally disagree with this because they're the strongest people in the IDF in a lot of cases. So now Netanyahu came out. I believe I saw a tweet this morning that, hey, I'm not going to support the Haredi position in the upcoming game. And he's making a pivot to try to form a different coalition, I think, in the fall elections. What do you think?
Oh, you're spot on. The big issues here, that's perhaps the biggest. It's certainly one of the biggest issues in the upcoming election. The Haredim have angrily insisted that they will not serve in the IDF. And these are not just people who are studying Torah. Those, in fact, what Netanyahu and others have tried to say is, if you're really studying Torah, okay, but the vast majority are not. They just don't serve. They're refusing to go in because of their Haredim.
They get welfare payments,
And
right?
my word. Yeah, they're supported by the state, and they get all their freedoms here. It is
And they make babies.
lots of babies, and frankly, it's splitting the society here, because when you have the vast majority who are putting their lives on the line, their loved ones are putting their lives on the line, and you go shopping and you see the Haredim walking around and young men, and it's like, well, why aren't you putting your life on the line for the country? And it's creating a huge amount of resentment. So yes, you're right. That's a huge issue. And yes, there was a law. Well, the Supreme Court some time ago said they had to serve, and they made it clear. And then Netanyahu's coalition passed a law saying, okay, we will postpone any arrest of those who refuse to serve for 6 months. So it was kicking the can down the road, something that Netanyahu's been very, very good at, and has made kind of his signature policy over the years on issues that are tough. So it is interesting, though. I saw the same report you did, that he said that, no, going forward, we tried this. Okay, we tried to do it. It didn't work. So we're not going to do that anymore. So I do think he's doing this for political reasons, because he knows it's a really, really issue that could defeat him in the upcoming elections in terms of coming back as prime minister. The other things that are hurting him very badly are lack of any accountability. He's refused any accountability whatsoever for what happened on 7 October 2023. Yes, he's done a very, very good job in the sense it happened, but there is a keen sense here that he's not even come close to doing what needs to be done. He's put off authorizing commissions. He's kicked that can down the road, and it's very frustrating. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but it's an uncertain thing here with this election coming up. I believe the vote is taking place. I think it's October 27. I'm doing that from my head, but it's coming up in October for sure.
Okay. So yeah,
I want to throw in something else. I interviewed a guy last week.
Oh, I want to talk about that. Yeah. Tell us who you interviewed and what the interview was about. It was a phenomenal interview.
Yeah, he's 70 years old, and
young guy.
And he's in the reserves. He's 70, right? Yes, I think he is perhaps the oldest active reserve officer, but he's in it. And we see this everywhere. Many of the men and women who are serving in the reserves are in their 40s and 50s. So they're in the middle of their most productive work years. And I have a good friend of mine whose brother I just ran into the other day has been in Gaza. He just came out of Gaza, and he's been in Gaza, and he's been serving in the IDF reserves probably at least half of the time since 7 October. So over a year of time. That's time off of work. And now he comes back with his family, and Gaza is what? An hour and a half away, an hour away from where he lives in Jerusalem. He comes back, and now suddenly he has to be back in the workplace, back with his family, and the jolt is just, it's a terrible thing to go through. And this is happening all across the country, and is having an economic impact. Wages are down, productivity in the country is down because its primary workers have been serving in the IDF. They've had to. So that's another big issue.
But this is something we need to be praying about because of PTSD, the strain on families, as you've said, the culture. I can't think of another word right now. The sort of, as you've said, the shock of coming from Gaza. Yeah. You're with your fellow brothers there in difficult circumstances. Then you go back to Jerusalem within family, and that is something that need to be.
And it's done in a matter of hours. I mean, it just, you're there, you're not there, again, you're back, and it's an entirely different world. You're moving from one reality to another, and it is very traumatic.
Yeah, I know when we were there on my tour last fall, Avi Abloh, who's a big. I love Avi just because he's like so positive about everything. Like right. This is the greatest time to be alive ever. There's no stress or anything like that. But he met with my group on the tour bus for a short time, and he was in his reserves uniform because he was coming from reserve service and heading home for Shabbat. So they kind of go in and out. Eliana Passington, if you want to go look on my channel, Eliana Passington lives at Shiloh. She and her husband bought a lot or a place up there and built up there. There's nothing up there. And of course, everybody says, oh, no, you're an illegal home. You got to tear your home down. They fought it in court for years and won. She's a wonderful lady. It's one of the most fascinating interviews I've ever done. She bought a house at Shiloh because she's an Orthodox Jew. This is where Hannah prayed for a son. Yes. And they built their house. I mean, she's such a wonderful person. And I did reach out to her recently before my car accident. And I said, I need to interview again. She goes, well, I'm in the reserves. She's in the reserves. She's a mother with 8 children and 4 grandchildren. Right. And she's serving in the IDF. Yes. It's an amazing thing.
When you also, John and Brian, when you're listening, I remember listening to this a number of months ago, and the wonderful Mordecai Kedar is then mentioning the fact that he's just got to go and do some security, few hours.
And he's no spring chicken.
He's our age.
Absolutely.
He's the age of Brian and I think.
Yeah, where he is, security detail. It was within his community. It was amazing. There's a real lesson there, I think, to many other people.
So anyway, somebody asked me a question about church in Sarasota. I believe you talked about Charlie, my friend Charlie. You can follow him, and it is the Superior Word Church. It's on Superior Street or Road in Sarasota, and you can go there. It's just a small congregation, very faithful to the Word. And good friends. I've spoke there a number of years ago. So great people. So anyway, so Brian, and I want people to understand the Haredi, it's upsetting the demographics of Israel. It's been going on long enough that it's affecting the election outcomes because they're growing very powerful. And I just will say you if you haven't been to Israel and haven't been in an Orthodox Jewish neighborhood, Haredi neighborhoods, and I'm not talking about Zionist Orthodox or anything like that, but in the Haredi neighborhoods, I remember when we came into Israel, this is probably 2017, we took one of those, what do they call them, Nesher buses or something from the airport, which means there's no leg room. I had to sit sideways because I couldn't put my legs in front of me.
They are terrible.
I know. But we came in. Now we were second, or they drop off people in order. They ask you where you're going. So we were like second, but the first lady was dropped off in a Haredi neighborhood in Jerusalem. And as we were coming up to her drop off, I didn't count, but I'm pretty sure if I had counted in a 1 kilometer stretch along the main thoroughfare, just on that street, there were over 100 baby carriages in a little over half a mile. And then we went out to met Joel Kramer, and we went out to get a hamburger that night. And if you go down by the between where the apartment we stayed at near City Hall there and the Damascus Gate, there's a big Orthodox Jewish neighborhood, very strict Orthodox. They shut the streets down. They put barricades up on Shabbat.
They sure do,
yeah. But you go down through there along the highway going down towards the Damascus Gate, and it's at night. It's like everybody has a baby or 2 or 3, and it's I hate to say thick like flies, but I don't know the other, because they all wear black, and and you can see the movement a little. It's a crazy thing because there's so many children. So even living in a growing community in Ohio, where we keep building schools and high schools, and we're putting up another one in our district. Would be the fifth one. When we moved to Columbus, they had one. Now they have five, and we're paying for them all. But so we have children here, and it's a growing community. But when you go to Israel and see these Orthodox Jewish communities, it's shocking, I guess, to us.
It's also interesting too that looking at anti-Semitism worldwide, it is almost always the misbehavior of a few Haredim that become the basis for saying all Israel is like this, all Jews are like this, they all behave like this. And that's a mistake because while first of all, they are not monolithic. Among the Haredim, you have hundreds, maybe thousands of various sects, if you will. And some of them are almost cultic. Others are very, we would say, normal in terms of, but they are not a monolithic group. Now, the Haredim have formed a coalition saying they will not serve in the IDF, and that is hugely problematic. But they do not represent the culture at large. They are a growing minority, but they're still a minority. I think perhaps 20% of Israel, which is significant. It's a huge amount.
And that number is only going to increase.
It's going to increase. And also another concern too is that there are indicators that if this coalition persists, that a lot of Israelis are so fed up they will leave the country. We've already seen a lot say, look, this is not healthy for our family, for our work, for our lives. This is not for us. And so there has been and continues to be an exodus of Israelis. Now, on the other hand, it's very encouraging. I saw or heard a statistic only in the last week or so about how many thousands, and I don't have the number, have purchased tickets to return to Israel so that they can vote in the October elections. And if you're an Israeli, you can't vote from afar. You have to be here.
No mail-in ballots, huh?
Israelis no, but Israelis have to come. They have to be in the land to vote in an election. And Israelis who are abroad are coming back in huge numbers to vote. That's good.
Right. So, well, we'll see how that goes. It'll be interesting to watch the coalition. I want to make sure we understand that we distinguish between the Haredim, however you say it, the Orthodox Jews who say they don't have to serve, they just get to study Torah and make babies because they might give birth to the Mashiach. And then other Orthodox Jews, like, for example, the other parts of Netanyahu's coalition, the Smotrich party, member Knesset Ohad Tal, who I've met, and then the Ben Gvir party. These are people that will serve in the armed forces and that type of thing.
They're called religious Zionists. Yes.
So, well, we'll see how that goes. So let's go back to a discussion about the up and down of we're attacking, we're not attacking. Iran's threatening attacks. They don't do it. We don't do it. And I think it's just creating a lot of stress. It's like, decide on a path and get it over with, or don't do anything. I'm concerned personally as I see this back and forth from President Trump. And I don't have all the data. I don't know what our munitions stores are. I'll see a post that, we're running out of interceptor missiles, and Ukraine wants to license to build the Patriots or a version of the Patriot missiles to defend themselves against some pretty enormous missile attacks that have hit Kyiv over the last week from Russia. And we don't really even hear about that, but now Trump saying, "Oh no, you can't make the missiles to defend yourself." And then I see all these leaks to the press. Oh, we are running out of missiles. Then I said, "Oh no, we got plenty. Don't worry about it." And how do you figure out what the truth is in all of this?
I think that's the question of the day about everything we hear. How do we know what's true? How do we know what the reality is? There is so much misinformation that's put out there. And some of it is to intentionally deceive for strategic reasons. And whatever, how do we know what's true? And I can tell you here, that's a big question. I have one very good friend who is very, very always addicted to the news and always knows exactly what's going on. And she has had to take a break. And this is like phenomenal. I've never seen this before with her. She is not looking at the news all the time because it's actually driving her crazy. And you can't know. She said, what's going on? Nobody knows. And there is that sense that nobody really knows what's going on because there's so much misinformation out there in the news.
So I put up a map of the Middle East and the Mediterranean.
Nice map.
Yeah, this is, by the way, I found this map, and usually it's called mappy.com, MAPY.com. I just happened on it, and you can make it 3D. There's not a lot of options, but you can make it 3D and, kind of tilt it around and twist it around, and it's very well detailed. But the interesting thing is, one thing that I've always tried to do is get good detailed satellite maps of Israel. And Israel's restricted that. Somehow this one will get you that good detailed map of Israel if you zoom in. I'll show you in a second. But so let's talk about sort of the strategy that's going on. I don't even know where to begin because there's all these different fronts. So the Houthis are shutting down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait down in let me see if I can get I'm looking for my mouse pointer.
Down at the far end of the Red Sea there.
Yeah. So there we go.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. There it is. So here's the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Of course, in the upper right-hand corner, we have the Strait of Hormuz, which is open or closed, depending on which minute of the last 10 you've decided to check. Trump says it's open, it's closed, it's open, it's closed. Iran says it's closed. When Trump says it's open, Iran says it's closed. And everybody's playing games. I object to the people who tell me I don't understand Trump. I understand what Trump is doing, okay, but you dismiss what the Iranians are doing too. They're playing the same game, and they're probably better at it. I think it was maybe David Wormser, who's a great security analyst you should follow. I think he was on Israel 365 with Rabbi Wilicki, and he said the Iran doesn't want a deal; they want a negotiation, and I think that's true. So, what do you guys understand the status of everything is? I just wonder, is like, how do the oil? We're still getting gas. I'm not sure how all of that's working right now.
Well, I want to say one thing. Looking at the map here, I would like to encourage everyone watching to study your map. So if you look at the news on your computer or on your phone, it's a very easy thing to click on the name of a city or a country, and it'll take you to the map of your choice, and you can learn where things are located. There is a great need for geographic literacy. And at least Americans are not especially well known for having that. They think, what's something over there very amorphous and hazy, and they don't know. But this is the eye of the storm in the world. This is what's happening here. This is where things are happening and will happen biblically. So we need to know this area, and if we're going to understand it and be in spiritual warfare, praying about the things that we are reading about and hearing about. There
So,
are
Brian,
forces at work.
that's a great point, because we were told in Ephesians that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places. And then we see in Daniel he's asking for a prayer, and then I think it was Michael came to him, the archangel, and said, Daniel, I've been trying to get here for 3 weeks to give you, I left the day you prayed, and I've been trying to get here for 3 weeks, but the prince of Persia resisted me. I've spiritual.
So the question is, how many viewers know where Persia is?
Okay.
They can actually look at it and say, oh, that's where it is. Well, it's Iran, right?
It's modern day Iran. So
Right.
sort of in the middle of the screen there.
Yeah.
And nobody's invading Iran. I remember George Friedman at Stratfor many years ago said, Iran is a fortress country. So this green area, those are mountains. So there's a big desert in the middle, and you're not getting a landing force anywhere, even if you came in from the Caspian Sea, if you could, which is highly doubtful. If you come from the Persian Gulf, you've got massive mountains in between you and getting to Tehran, which is in the middle of mountains. There's ski resorts. And
I encourage anyone, take a look at a photo of Tehran facing toward the Caspian Sea. It's a little bit like looking at something in Colorado. You've got snow-capped mountains back there. These are huge, huge mountains. The country is almost surrounded by these things, and it makes it very, very difficult, virtually impossible to mount a military invasion, certainly.
It's probably why there's been a country there for a very long time,
Exactly.
in one form or another.
Yeah.
So so that's and so this week there was so if you can kind of get a little, let me zoom out a little bit. So we have the we have the Caspian Sea on the right, we have the Black Sea on the left, and then in the middle of the Black Sea is the Crimean Peninsula.
Yeah.
And then to the right of the Crimean Peninsula is the Sea of Azov. And then Odessa, the port of Odessa, is over here in this little portion of Ukraine. So Ukraine attacked an Iranian ship in the Caspian Sea. And immediately the people who don't like Ukraine said, oh, Zelensky's trying to start World War III. I don't know that Zelensky cares about starting World War III. Ukraine has done phenomenal things, but Russia's still got a lot of missiles and military, and they're calling up 1 million people and all this. But Ukraine, just so you know, this falls into the wars and rumors of wars. There's some pro-Ukrainian channels that I follow on YouTube. Paul Warburg, Jason J. Smart, I think. And they put up videos every day about what's going on. And Ukraine has completely decimated large portions of Russia energy structure across the country. Russia also has a thing called wild berries.
Yep.
They are like the Amazon of Russia.
Yeah.
So you see these huge, everybody travels around it all. You see these huge Amazon warehouses everywhere. We've got a couple here in the Columbus area, and they're the biggest warehouses, trucking warehouses I've ever seen.
Huh.
And it's great. I can order, there's a little 0-calorie energy drink called Celsius that I like, that I order, and they have a good price at Amazon a lot. And so I'll order them, and it's here in 2 hours.
Wow.
I'll order like 4 dozen of them or something, and it's on our porch. It's so incredibly convenient. So they have that in Russia for wild berries, but the wild berries also, it is believed, Russia denies it, but Ukraine claims it, they also supply equipment to soldiers. Soldiers buy their equipment, clothing, and that type of thing through wild berries. And so now they've probably cut out at least 10% of the wild berries capability across Russia. 10% is a big deal when you're doing just-in-time delivery.
Yeah.
And now there are gas lines. I've heard of people being in lines in Moscow for 4 days.
Wow.
They are surrounding gas trucks on the way to a gas station, and they're demanding the driver to allow them to put the gas in gas cans from the truck. So they clean out the truck before it gets to the gas station.
Wow.
The Kerch Strait Bridge, let me zoom in on this. This is kind of an interesting thing. So
Yeah.
between, and then all these, and so Russia's grain comes out through the Sea of Azov, and Ukraine's comes out through Odessa, then into the Black Sea, and then down. I'll show you the straits there in just a moment. But remember the Kerch Strait Bridge that was attacked a number of years ago in this war, which has been going on for 4.5 years now. In 3 weeks, it'll be 4.5 years.
Wow.
It started February 24th, 2022. So long ago, I wasn't even in my 70s when it started. But they've destroyed a lot of the fleet. They've destroyed Russian subs using things. I just saw a video from Paul Warburg. He had there's a new drone boat that Ukraine has. It comes ashore like a landing craft, and a robot comes off with a machine gun.
Wow.
That can handle terrain. And so now they're able to do this. They've even rescued soldiers using AI robots and stuff. Their drone technology is second to none. And in the first year of the war, I believe Ukraine produced 3,000 drones. And then they modified a lot of drones, like the ones you get at Wildberries or Amazon or Best Buy. And they were able to do surveillance with those drones. In 2027, Ukraine has said they will produce 10 million drones. This year, 7 million. So that's in 2 years. That'll be 17 million drones. Nobody's making 17 million missiles or 17 million tanks or 17 million troop carriers. And they're now saying that a new soldier at the Ukrainian front from Russia, who's had a couple weeks of training, average time that they last before they are incapacitated averages about 20 minutes.
Wow.
Before they're killed or injured. This is a huge problem. So I think Russia's bogged down. They still have a powerful military, but this raises a lot of things. So the grain, by the way, the interesting thing about the grain is when you look at Russia, Russia's a very, very big country. I mean, here's the Crimean Peninsula in the middle. Most of the Russians who came in to populate that when Russia took it over in 2014 have left. They can't get resupplied. The Kerch Strait Bridge was damaged in that explosion early on in the war.
Yeah.
And the rail and truck traffic is about 25% of what the bridge was designed to handle.
Wow.
And trains can only go across there like at 4 miles per hour. Everything is insane. But the problem is Ukraine still, Russia's attacking Ukrainian ships to take grain out. This could have a big impact on food famine in Africa because they need that grain. That's where they get most of their supply. And we're in a drought here in the United States. I don't know if we'll be able to make up the shortfall. It's insane. But the difference is Ukraine, if you look where Ukraine sits, they're north of the Crimean Peninsula. They have an option to ship their grain. They can do rail and truck transfer of grain to Europe. They border on Europe. They can get it out that way. But Russia's option is maybe thousands of miles across Russia with trucks that need diesel, and they can't get enough diesel to even bring extra troops to Ukraine. I don't think we really understand what's going on. So now Ukraine attacks an Iranian ship in the Caspian Sea here between Turkmenistan and Azerbaijan that was delivering, it's believed, drones from Iran to Russia. And there are big military transports from Russia and China landing in Tehran as we speak, 17 or more a day. I'm sure they're not bringing Celsius energy drinks. They're bringing military equipment. And so this is, I think, a world war. Do you guys agree with that, or think I'm crazy at?
No, I don't. I don't think you are crazy, John. Because and thank you, Brian, for what you said about encouraging people to look at maps, and only an American can address fellow Americans to draw them to the lack of geography experience, or the fact that can they actually be bothered to find out where the rest of the world is. Sorry, I have many friends in America, love them dearly, but I do point this out at times. But John, what you're saying is we have to pay attention to like, where does China get its oil from? What is China? Is China sending in military hardware to detect who is flying over Iran, for argument's sake? Who is buying oil off Russia? Is it the ghost ships that India eventually goes to buy the oil? So you're looking at what country is supporting another country. Iran makes drones. They go to Russia. Russia then sends them against Ukraine. Then also, John, there's a really important thing. You've said this. I think you've discussed this on your technocracy roundtable again, which is the way all of this, especially with the drone technology, I'm saying the obvious, is changing how people are viewing warfare in regard to the technology. You have pointed out, like others, like Paul Warburg, etc., have had, that since Russia went into Ukraine, so much to discuss there from a historical point of view, is the fact that how many tanks, how much hardware have they lost on the ground over time, got bogged down, as Ukraine has taken the gaming technology and then created all these drones to do what they're now doing. It's changing how people are looking at war, which must mean, John, that within the Pentagon, within the American military, they are then learning, like they have off Israel every time it comes back to this, that when Israel has to engage in wars that it hasn't started, it has to then engage. It then feeds all that information back to America in regard to this whole row about who is providing this aid, and the fact that the information goes back far more to America, who benefit out of that, and the military industrial complex. And the other thing I'd say, John, on that note, in regard to Israel, Brian, tell me if I'm right or wrong, is that suddenly there's a discussion about Israel then dusting off creating its own military plane again, which it then started, and then it stopped because of the negotiations about the American aid, and then saying, okay, you can have all this, but as long as we're able to produce the munitions that Israel then needs. And of course, we saw that after October the 7th, when Biden they were slow walking even bulldozers that Israel needed, etc. That's another conversation we need for about 3 hours. But Brian, sorry, the planes.
Well, yes. In fact, just this week, there are reports coming out that Israel is going to be developing its own line of fighter jets. So we won't be doing F-35s anymore. Now, this is going to take a while. It's not going to happen in a short period of time. But the very clear move that Israel is making right now, and Netanyahu is spearheading this, is that in Israel, we want to be free of U.S. aid, if you will, at least defined as such, in a matter of years. There's a recognition here that this is not going to be a politically viable thing going forward in the U.S. for virtually any president that we can foresee. And so basically, I think what we're going to see is language more in terms of a partnership, which it is already. But I think we're going to see the language of aid disappear, and the era of joint ventures we're going to see just different language to accomplish the same things, but Israel is going to be more, is aiming to be much more independent of aid, and especially from the U.S. And so, yes, they are talking, and there were at least artistic images of the jets they might want to build. They look pretty cool.
And they're also developing a thing called hypnosis, which is to handle drone swarms, because, you know, Hezbollah is not sending many drones into Israel right now because Israel's pushed them back and they're too far away to send drones into Israel using fiber optics. But the fear is that the drones will become, in fact, there was a wonderful article everybody should read in the New York Times it was a week ago today, about the drones technology, AI technology and drones, because it makes the drone autonomous. It doesn't need to communicate with everybody.
Right.
And it's very frightening. And they send these swarms in, and there's really no defense of them. So Israel is, they've deployed iron beams, but iron beams have very limited range. And for example, if you're protecting a pipeline with iron beam, you need one every kilometer. Well, you don't have that many, in a 400, 500, 600, 700, 800 mile kilometer pipeline in Saudi Arabia. You would need, one or two iron beams every kilometer to be effective against the things coming in. And how many can they handle at a time? This is, everybody talks about, and we'll talk a little bit about trade routes. So
I think these drones, they remind me of, the picture that comes to my mind are swarms of mosquitoes.
Right.
You can kill a few mosquitoes, but if they come in a swarm, it doesn't matter if you kill 1,000, you get 100,000 still coming after you. And this whole era of drone warfare is changing the face of conflict, and we're going to see that more and more and more. And I also always think of, what is it? I believe it's in Revelation, where it says that a pit is opened up and these
demons come out. Revelation chapter 9.
They sound a lot like drones.
And there's a stinging in their death in their tail or whatever, like a scorpion or something like that.
Yeah, so maybe they are possessed drones.
John is a bit like Brian. It's like we've talked about this before. Maybe it's like the film Washington Down with Gerard Butler, when he pushes Morgan Freeman into the river to make sure the president gets killed. But it's this drone. This is what you're talking about, isn't it? This drone swarm that illustrates that. Yeah.
Yeah. And how many drones in a swarm do you need? Is it, if you have a Patriot missile battery, what do they have? Maybe a dozen Patriot missiles loaded up to fire, and you have 100 drones coming in. I mean, and how do you decide where they're going to go? It's changing the face, and it's making warfare very asymmetrical.
It's what you said, like Ukraine. It's what is enabling Ukraine to take on Russia and actually win.
Yes.
Well, all these drones are producing. Yes.
I have a video of John Mersheimer. Mersheimer considers himself to be a geopolitical realist or historical realist. He's very popular on Tucker Carlson and the woke right channels. And I have a thing of it's 8 videos of him back to back saying when Russia's going to win the war in Ukraine over the last 4.5 years, from a few days to a few weeks to a couple months. Oh, we're just doing this to bleed everybody out 3 years ago, and they'll be done shortly. And now we're 3.5 years later, and it's crazy. And he's a huge, I started to get into an argument with somebody about Mersheimer, and they said, well, you just don't understand. He's the most intelligent. And I'm like, he hates Israel and Jews. He was a co-author of the book, The Israel Lobby. He's one of the guys, he's a Russian tool. Whether he knows it or not, Russia uses him all the time to push this anti-Israel, anti-Jew propaganda. So we have this thing. So let's talk about trade routes for a moment. Then we're going to talk about the incident in Morocco the other day. Maybe we'll sort of relate that to what's going on in the UK. And then we'll talk about the meeting in Rome. So I want to make sure we get to all of these because I think they're important. So Saudi Arabia sits here. They're trying to get oil out. So right now, Saudi Arabia has a pipeline across Saudi Arabia that comes from their production area over here near near the Persian Gulf. This is where the oil fields are, and it's a Shia area of Saudi Arabia, by the way, next to Kuwait and next to Bahrain, which is also a Shia majority, but it's ruled by a Sunni guy. So it's always unstable, but they're piping things about 4.5 million barrels per day over here to a port on the Red Sea called Yanub. And then the plan was that they would go from Yanub and they would go down because they're selling oil to China. That's one of their big customers. They would go down here through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which is Yemen here at the southern end of the Arabian Peninsula. That's under the control of strategic parts of it are in control of the Houthis. And it's a much bigger country than I think we give it credit for. There's like 40 million people that live there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I always think it's like, what do they do for a living? Because they live in a desert. It's not, I don't know, but, and they have all these missiles and everything, and they're shooting at tankers. They hit a tanker and blew it up, and they came from Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia wants to go through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, through the Gulf of Aden, and then over to around India to China. But now they can't go through Bab el-Mandeb Strait. They can go through the Suez Canal, but if they go through the Suez Canal, they have to go all the way across the Mediterranean, through the Straits of Gibraltar, all the way around Africa and across. Right. So what might be an 11-day trip turns into a 50-day trip. Yep. That's a logistical supply chain problem. And so what Saudi Arabia is doing is they're trying to establish an alternative trade route to get oil to market, to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. So on the Strait of Hormuz itself, the United Arab Emirates that are here on the, I guess would be the west side of the Strait of Hormuz. This is Iran at the top. This little thumb area, it looks like a thumb area, is Qatar. Right here is Bahrain. And then up the Persian Gulf a ways is Iraq and Iran and Kuwait and all that. So what the United Arab Emirates is trying to do is, and so by the way, at the end of the peninsula up here, that country is Oman. That the peninsula directly across from Iran, that land is owned by Oman. So what the United Arab Emirates wants to do is build or expand a pipeline from their oil producing areas across the strait to the Gulf of Oman, so they bypass the Strait of Hormuz. And you know, you've got just zoom in on this. This is Dubai. Very wealthy city, but people are they're leaving Israel, Brian. They're leaving Dubai because they don't want to live someplace where missiles are flying in. And we sometimes forget that these are tribal areas. The Emiratis are 7 tribes that have joined together. Mordecai Kedar talks a lot about this. Maybe this is the way to get the Palestinians together because they're very tribal. I want to talk to you about that in a minute. But, you know, Dubai has these Palm Island and the World Islands and all these the tallest building in the world, massive downtown. But the Emiratis, ethnic Emiratis, are only 1 million people. They're like 1/8 of the number of Jews in Israel. And they have all this wealth. And then you go over here to Qatar. And the Qataris, Doha has this massive buildings along their waterfront and everything. They're only 300,000 people. And they're spending billions influencing things here in the United States.
They sure are.
Way beyond what APAC does. And nobody ever talks about it. You know, everybody just focuses on the little tiny amount of money, relatively speaking. I think APAC maybe is what, 99th out of the PACs that give money to people in Congress. It's not that high, and the whole thing is crazy. So everybody's trying to get alternative trade routes. I know I'm talking too much. So let me tell you what happened. So we have Turkey up here. Turkey doesn't have a lot of oil and gas, but you can see that Turkey is strategically located. So that all this oil and gas that might go through the Strait of Hormuz or down through the Red Sea into Bab el-Mandeb Strait, Turkey says, wait a minute, we got this solution. Just do pipelines through us. We'll get a cut of the pipelines, and everything will be great. So there was a meeting, interestingly. And so if we could just talk about the meetings that took place this week. Aoun, the prime minister, is he prime minister or president of Lebanon? The head of Lebanon was at the White House. He went from the White House, and this was earlier this week. It seems like it was like 3 weeks ago, right? And Netanyahu came to the White House this week. It was just like, what, Tuesday or Wednesday?
Yeah.
And he was there for Lindsey Graham's funeral. And it seems like it was like 4 weeks ago. There's like this warping of time that's taking place. Then Aoun went to Turkey. And when he got to Turkey, he met with Erdogan. And Erdogan said, I have it someplace. But Erdogan essentially said, hey, Aoun, we will help you out. We will we'll do the things that you want. We'll help. And we are concerned about Lebanese sovereignty. So let me hang on a second here. I'll stop one screen and share another. My producer's not working today. So here's Erdogan at a meeting with Aoun, and he's talking about we wanted to advance bilateral relations across a broad range of areas. But then Erdogan says, we want to fill the role that UNIFIL had in Lebanon. UNIFIL was the United Nations force. And it's Brian, are you happy that Erdogan wants to take the role of UNIFIL in Lebanon?
Well,
living in Israel?
Of course not. Erdogan has made it very, very clear. He hates Israel. He wants to come in and rescue Al-Aqsa Mosque, which means take over the Temple Mount. He's waiting in the wings to build his own caliphate or advance his own caliphate. So if Iran is at all diminished, he's just standing by to do what he wants to do to come in. And he has been, his language has been the most anti-Semitic of any leader that I have heard, and consistently so over the last 2.5, 3 years.
They want to take part in all initiatives aimed at supporting security in the region.
Which means he wants to get close to Israel. He wants to come in to near Israel's border in Syria. He's the hand he's the hand behind the scene that has brought about the new regime in Syria, and now offering Lebanon help gives him a chance to get his forces and his influence again right down at Israel's border. So not just Syria now, but at Israel's northern border, but also Lebanon. Yeah, it's insidious.
Mark, any comments?
Yeah, well, look at what the comments on what's happened in Syria, his support there. Remember, John, as you have talked about many times, Trump's going, I see what you've done there, the one bloody blah. But so you've got that. Then it's the border peace in Gaza, where Turkey is saying, "Oh, right, well, we'll put our troops there, bang next door to the Israeli border there." Yeah, he's trying to circle. Brian, just quickly, is Hezbollah, is Iran trying to rearm Hezbollah as we speak? Is that also, when we get this downtime, so to speak, awful expression maybe in regard to war, but is Iran really working hard to try and rearm Hezbollah?
Well, the sense is very much that Iran has been almost desperately pushing Hezbollah and the Houthis to increase and maintain their assaults, attacks against Israel, even though Hezbollah is badly crippled, but they've been pushing them to do it so that they have an excuse saying, well, we're not doing it as Hezbollah, but we know what Iran is doing. Iran is attempting to push its proxies. And so I don't doubt at all that it's very much has been attempting to rearm. Hezbollah has certainly been attempting to rebuild and rearm. And Israel is still uncovering, wow, I don't know if the rest of the world knows, Israel's been uncovering these massive tunnels, and very near the border, and nothing like what Hamas said. These are built in rock, they're deep, they're extensive, they're first class, and they are full of armaments that are intended to invade Israel. And this is back from 2023, even before that. Hezbollah was building this up, but these things are still being discovered. So I don't think Hezbollah it certainly doesn't have the freedom to build or acquire weapons that it did just a few years ago. A lot of it's supply, and they can't come, at least very easily now, across Syria. It used to be that weapons just flowed from Iraq to Syria right into Lebanon. That's not so easy anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if something's happening, but it isn't so easy.
Sorry, before I hand back to John, just want to raise the other thing. When we're talking about drones crisscrossing, let's not forget the drones and trying to bring weapons in from Egypt. Other people far greater than me have talked about this for a long time. I mean, that's the other concern that has been going on for Israel as well with this new technology.
Yeah, so I put up a map. This is sort of put into a little bit of 3D view.
Brilliant.
Of, as of this mapy.com, if you guys want to get there and play with it, you can change different views. And like I said, there's only a few selections, but this is in 3D view. And Brian, you can see this is the Sea of Galilee here at the bottom.
Yes.
Straight up there is Katzrin. You're very familiar with that. Excellent. And the Golan. Yep. And you can see the border. And then up in the right-hand top, you see Damascus. And then in the left, you see Beirut. And that's only, 50 miles from Damascus to Beirut. And so you get up in the Golan, you're 30 miles from the edge of Damascus, maybe, when you're up there at the Golan.
Yeah, I always kind of grin when I'm in Katzrin, which is just north of the Gettr at the Sea of Galilee. When I'm up there, I'm closer to Damascus and Beirut than I am to Jerusalem, where I live.
And then in the center, sort of center upper left, you see Kiryat Shimona, which is a city in the northern part of Israel. And Mark, we were up at Metula. Let's see if I can get Metula in here. There's Metula. I just have to wait for the map to kind of populate itself. So you can see Metula, Kiryat Shimona, and then Metula. And we were up there at the border in November with the Media Summit group. So, but in the north there, just so you understand, there's an old Crusader fortress called Beaufort.
Yes.
And the Crusaders built it because why did the Crusaders even come to Israel back in those days? Because they were trying to liberate it from the Muslims, right?
Right.
So Israel took over that in southern Lebanon, and they've done a couple of things with the I don't know if I can zoom in here a little bit. But if you look, you can sort of get the flavor for the terrain. It's very mountainous and hilly. Think of California, coastal California. But yeah, here's Metula here in the lower right. And so we stood like right up in here. We were up right there. But Beaufort Castle was built by the Crusaders because they're trying to get free the Holy Land from Islam. And it's been there for centuries, 1,000 years or more, 1,500 years. But Israel went in, they found all these tunnels, and they, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, they blew up. I mean, it was a massive explosion because it was full of arms and missiles and drones and all this. And so they just blew it up. And what was social media saying? Oh, look at Israel destroying the villages in Lebanon. No, they were destroying tunnels that were used by their enemy to launch missiles, rockets, drones, and everything, and mortars at Israel.
And in this case too, the IDF and Israel was very, very good about getting the evidence out there. We could actually see the tunnels. We could see the weapons. They did video tours going through these tunnels. We saw what was being built and what was there. Yeah.
Brian, wasn't it another illustration of how UNIFIL over many years has turned a blind eye, when tunnels are being dug next door to their lookout posts and stuff like this, and they just can't feel the vibrations of the drills or whatever.
No, they feel it. They see it. They know it. They know what's going on. They watch, and they do nothing.
Yeah.
It's been the case for, decades now.
Yeah.
I've seen their outposts. I've been up on the border. I see UNIFIL centers, right? I've been up there with my friend Seth Franzman, who's a well-known journalist here in Israel, and we've looked at them. He said, "Oh yeah, I know a guy who worked there," and they saw Hezbollah trucks, they saw Syria trucks come up and military, and they would they were allowed to operate freely. They were supposedly there to observe, and that's what they did. They watched Israel's enemies build their offensive capabilities right there on Israel's border, which is why Israel is now has that barrier, that slight area. They've gone into a couple miles into Syria, and now as well, of course, in Lebanon. They're not going to let that happen again. It's refusing to let the enemy come right up to its border as it was before October 7, 2023.
So anyway, let me stop sharing the screen here so I don't distract people. Okay. So we talked about trade routes. So everybody's trying to reroute everything, and Turkey says, we'll do it. And Turkey says that don't go through Israel. Remember the IMEC corridor that Netanyahu talked about at the UN, that Mohammed bin Salman talked about? We'll route it through Haifa, all this stuff. There's even talk of reviving a pipeline that was built by Iran and Israel back in the 70s from Eilat to Ashkelon, I think, and to build a pipeline to it and use that pipeline to get Saudi oil out to world markets. And so there's a lot of balls in the air. So the Iraqi foreign minister about a week and a half ago came to the United States, not the Iraqi foreign minister, the new Iraqi prime minister. And he said, we got to get all these Iranian militias out of here. We're going to shut them down. Of course, they've been launching drones and stuff into Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's had to attack them. They haven't attacked Israel yet, but they're going after Saudi Arabia for a reason. So the Iraqi prime minister is in Washington and signs all kinds of deals with Chevron. There's a big meeting at the State Department. We're going to get all this oil. We're going to establish trade routes. And we're going to revive the pipeline that went from the Iraqi oil areas through Syria to either, I think, Latakia, the port of Tartus. Right. And we'll get there because right now they're shipping oil by truck. And it's like, you have to understand, they're trying to replace so Iraq was sending about 2.5 million barrels a day out through the Strait of Hormuz. Now they're shut down. So how do you get that oil? So, well, we'll ship it by truck, but the truck can make, you have like hundreds of trucks trucking this oil. And then at the one crossing from Iraq into Syria, they found that some of the trucks are being used to smuggle weapons to Hezbollah.
Yep.
And so even Syria is shutting them down. And Syria is saying, we're going to attack the Iraqi militias if they mess with us. So Ashar has come out and said this. It's a huge mess. And everybody's trying to do the alternative trade routes. And the problem with the alternative trade routes, I know everybody's got this policy and they want to do all this stuff. But the problem is, if you can get tankers in the middle of the ocean and shut down them from shipping, you can probably attack a static in-place pipeline the same way. And so the trade routes, they all have this thing that doesn't work. So the Iraqi prime minister went to Ankara this week, and he has a big meeting with Erdogan, and they're signing agreements. And this was kind of interesting. I'll have to play the video someday. They're at the meeting. They have 5 agreements they're signing to get this pipeline transfer. I don't know if you've seen it, but Erdogan, he puts up his hand. Everybody says Erdogan's got mental decline and all this other thing. And he's like, wait a minute. I've only signed 4 agreements. Where's the 5th one? It's important. And so you saw the foreign minister and other people walking around, and the Iraqi minister who was supposed to sign the agreement comes from a pro-Iranian faction in Iraq, and he wouldn't sign the agreement. So the prime minister did sign it, but there's some question as to whether it's effective, because now Iran or Iraq and Turkey are saying, well, we'll ship 1 million barrels on a day on a temporary basis through this pipeline so we can get it to market, and Turkey can get its cut for transit fees. You know, it's a huge mess, but all these alternative routes don't do a thing. So I want to go now to let's talk about Spain, because I think this kind of brings into focus the what's going on, because we have a huge problem. So the other day in Spain, Morocco, and I don't know if you guys follow this, so let me just tell you what I know. So in Spain, which until 1492 was under the control of Islam, when they kicked Islam out, and the Jews, by the way. So at the southern tip of Spain, you have the Rock of Gibraltar, which is still, Mark still controls the Strait of Gibraltar, right?
I didn't know I was doing that personally, but under the UK, yep. Gibraltar is our territory. Yep.
So there's a little enclave here. So the Strait of Gibraltar is on the north up, and there's Morocco here, Tangier, you can see, and there's this little place called Ceuta. I don't know how it's pronounced. It's Spanish territory attached to Morocco, not to the homeland. And the other day, I've heard numbers of about 80,000 Moroccans or ethnic Africans showed up in Ceuta. I mean, you can see the videos. It's just, it's like, and their trucks bringing them, and they're coming out of the trucks. They're swimming across the ocean. They found 57 bodies so far. So 57 people. And then the question is, how did this, here you see the Rock of Gibraltar up here at the top, straight across. So and the question is, who did this? Any thoughts on that? I mean, how did they get all those people there at the same time on this day to do this?
There is history to this. My own understanding, listening to a few people without me being clever, the fact that in 2021, the whole argument, if you look at Morocco and below Morocco, this the Western Sahara region there, I believe, this whole argument is about that region wanting to have independence, and of Morocco and Algeria, I don't think get on. They're not friends. There is this discussion over this that Morocco is concerned about. In 2021, I think one of the freedom, the people that were wanting that free area to be free, they were treated in a Spanish hospital. The Moroccans weren't very happy about that, so they then released 9,000 people into Ceuta, I think at that time. And also there's another area just below there, I think it's called Manila as well. And around about 1958 there was a war,
it's on this other peninsula here to the right.
Yep. And Spain kept hold of those two territories. Recently, a few months ago, the president Sanchez, that lunatic, I believe, went into Algeria, met with the leader of Algeria. That again did not go down well with Morocco. So, John, I think we could say this is extremely well organized, but there's also another history. The Spanish government a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, then were giving amnesty to the amount of illegal immigrants within Spain to say that now you can now apply for citizenship. So there's been queues, and we are talking thousands and thousands of people, if not maybe up to 1 million plus. So there is that. So all of these things have to be considered. And also, if people want to know more details, Andrew Fox, who's does a podcast called The Brink with the wonderful Jake Wallace Simpson, that Andrew laid out a 17-minute podcast where he's explaining what's happening in North Africa and all the rest. I just want to say this: note again, look at that narrow strait, and as you've said, the Strait of Gibraltar. We've just looked at these narrow straits, whether that's the Strait of Hormuz, etc. Look at all these conflict points which need our prayer. John, that is my understanding of that, and you are right. Whether it's 60,000, the Spanish government have said a vast majority, if not all of those, have gone back. There are videos showing the fact that these people are sleeping on beaches. They're sleeping still within that town. They have not gone back. It turned into a riot, and going into people's shops, going into people's homes, behaving appallingly. And I don't think I'm out of order in saying that there were shouts, of Allah Akbar and all the rest. So also, just finally, John, my understanding is that maybe 3,100 odd prisoners were released from Moroccan jails. Maybe they were part of this. There is a town there, I think, Faridi, which is the Moroccan town. And again, it's sad, but it's also when people are earning X amount, if they went over the border, then they would earn even more within that economy. So just remember that the Prime Minister of Spain, how much he has criticized Israel, how much he has come against there historically, spiritually, and also he is an extreme leftist that is changing the demography of Spain. Spain is a country I know quite well, having had the privilege to go to there a number of times. But John, you raise a very, very important thing of the history. I'll just finally say this in regard to Spain. When we say the Moors, it's very interesting. It's a bit like when we're using the phrase the Barbary pirates. We are talking about Islamic armies. We're talking about Islamic pirates. We're talking about Islamic invaders. So this is what we're talking history here, and it's very important. We're addressing history. We're addressing the history of Islam, and people like the wonderful Bill Warner, if you find his work when he talks about the little red dots and all the battles within the Middle East, and then it comes up to 512. So there's a lot of education that people can do kindly on this subject. I'll be quiet. That's it.
Okay. So, Brian, what did you hear in Israel as to how this came about? I'm just kind of, you haven't heard.
Really, all I've noticed and taken note of here is that Israel is being blamed. It's being brought into this. It's like,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So immediately all
why?
the anti-Israel.
How is Israel doing this?
Well, because Israel, Morocco's in the Abraham Accords, and Israel wanted to show their support. So it was an Israeli-American operation to cause Muslims to invade Europe, but they never got to Europe.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, and this was all over my social media, all over my X feed, everybody making these claims. This is, look at Israel. And it's like, Israel got enough problems. I don't know how do you get 80,000 guys to show up in Morocco?
It's crazy.
Brian, I've told you that we had this discussion when I was in Israel. You can't believe Jews control the world if you drive in Jerusalem traffic.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, they can't control traffic.
Yeah.
Right. You can't even control traffic at home, let alone 80,000 people in a country all the way across the Mediterranean.
John, the other thing I'd say, total sarcasm where Spain goes, we want Gibraltar back, and then various people point the finger at Spain and say, well, look at these territories that you have in North Africa there. So it's a bit of pot,
okay.
Kettle black.
We're sort of, there's a couple things I want to go through. So
Okay.
I want to discuss the legislation, because I think this relates to it, and this is sort of how anti-Semitism comes about. So let me just share a screen here on some of the things. So let me just go through this for a minute, and then we'll get everybody's comments. So there's a bill that's pending in Congress. It's passed the House. It passed on a very narrow vote. It was like 216 to 212. 6 Republicans voted against it, and about 7 Democrats voted for it. And that's why it passed. So it just barely passed. It's called the National Defense Authorization Act, and it has some interesting provisions in there. One of the provisions is, let me see, here we go, is Section 219. Well, if you look at the beginning part of the bill, there is let me get the view here. So there's a section here, you can see it on the right. It's Section 219. So Section 219, whoops, I went too far, is United States-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative. Now, this is in the Senate. This included the SAVE Act, and I believe the Senate has carved the SAVE Act out of the bill that they're considering. So it's going through the process. Eventually, something like this is going to pass. So the theory is, so this is what the Joe Kitts, Steve Bannon's, the Quincy Institute and Trita Parsi and War Room, and all the people that hate Israel, Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and everything, they're saying this shows that and Thomas Massey, Israel and the United States are merging their military, and Israel's taking control of the U.S. military. And this is like, Brian, I think you mentioned the sort of sharing technology, sharing development of weapons and that type of thing. But there's no obligation that they do that. It's sort of a cooperation agreement. And we do this with about 20 other countries, by the way. And so immediately the Quincy Institute, which is a pro-Iranian propaganda operation funded by George Soros and the Koch brothers, under the guise of we want peace in the world. So everything Iran does, that they want peace too. And so they say that this is a merger of the militaries. Thomas Massey went on his media account yesterday talking about Morocco, this thing in Morocco, and he said, well, there was a committee report that said we think that Morocco should control the Western Sahara disputed area, And he made the implication was this had been enacted into law, and it was a complete, total falsehood. It takes like 20 seconds that this was in a committee report. But when you look at the bill, he said, it's in this bill. You look in the bill, Morocco's never mentioned in the bill. Massey is a total, complete liar, a fraud. And my concern, Mitch McConnell may not make it. And the governor of Kentucky will get to appoint a senator, and he may select Thomas Massey, which really, although McConnell's no great shakes anyway, but Massey would be worse. So, but I want to say too is I think this is important. I think it does show a lot of cooperation between the United States and Israel. But if you go back to the 2026 bill, which I pulled up here, that actually became law, in that, oh no, this is the Intelligence Authorization Act, and it does have this United States Israel intelligence briefing. I'm losing track of where I am. So there was a bill. Let's see. Oh, the bill also, the National Defense Authorization Act also has a thing about the United States Abraham Accords Defense Cooperation Initiative. Don't really have time to talk about that, but that's a big deal. But if you go back to the statute for the 2026 Authorization Act, you'll find here in section 1231 and the 35 matters relating to Israel. So I see a lot of people say, "Oh, this is new. This has never been done before." But it was in the law before, just as there's been laws before, like our cooperation with Canada and the UK and NATO and that type of thing. It's what they do to authorize the Department of Defense to do this. And so when you look at, here it is, matters relating to Israel, and you go to section 1231, there we go, 12, research, development, testing, and evaluation of emerging technologies to further the warfighting capabilities of the United States and certain partner countries. This was for Israel, okay? But it says temporary authorizations in 1244 related to Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel, and the United States Defense Industrial Base. So we've been doing this with countries for a long time. Now, all of a sudden, because this Russia propaganda operation and all their tools, they're pushing it like, oh, the Jews control everything and they're going to control our United States military. Brian, I know this is something near and dear to you. What do you think?
I think you're right. It's nuts. I'm weary of the whole thing. That's not a good answer, but I'm just tired. I'm just tired of the nicest thing. Of the nonsense. I have another word I'd rather use, but I'm just tired of it.
What do you think, Mark?
I understand Brian's frustration. And also, as you've said, when someone makes a statement, it can be disputed within seconds, and we're just fed up of the propaganda. Look, people may disagree. Bring facts, please. Bring the facts, and then can we go from there? And also, Brian, I wanted to say this, is that all the information that the American industrial military complex gains is at the cost of young IDF soldiers' lives on many occasions.
Well said.
And the other thing, as you know, is it's all very well testing drones in the middle of California, but if you're able to then test your military hardware in battle and you're not risking any of your own soldiers yourself, this is a fact, then that is why you want that information and should be extremely grateful for that. So,
by the way, that there's a little footnote there. Israel is doing very, very well economically because nations around the world are lining up to buy
Greece, Germany,
its technology and its defense systems. They've seen them at work and they know they work and they want them. And so now there's a huge market out there. In spite of all the anti-Semitic rhetoric and anti-Israel rhetoric, the nations of the world are lining up to buy Israeli technology.
And that may include other Middle Eastern countries, whether UAE or whatever, that may be including there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, that's good. This is just complete nonsense. And this is, like I said, I think it's important that the United States and Israel are cooperating, but we cooperate with a lot of other countries too. Maybe it's a little bit more with Israel because of the technology we get, the benefits we get that's worth in the billions. And by the way, I'm seeing like Israel may have the strongest economy in the world right now,
Yeah.
from what I'm seeing, from top to bottom. And it's like, how are they doing this in the middle of a war on 7, 8 fronts? It's pretty amazing. I think there's a supernatural component to it. That's
I
my
agree.
personal
100%.
opinion. So I'm going to share a screen. I want to go through one other thing. So there's a lot of things about the board of peace and Hamas disarmament, and Trump posted Hamas has agreed to disarm and all this other stuff. What are your thoughts on that, Brian?
Oh, I've not paid much attention to the Board of Peace since I looked at it when it was first founded. I saw an article in, I believe it was the New York Times a few days ago, recapping the Board of Peace and acknowledging that was created by Trump as an alternative to the UN, and Trump's in charge of it for life. It doesn't make any difference. He's no longer president. He's got complete control. So there are, that's kind of gone quiet. And now that the Board of Peace is coming back with this, with the attempt, it's got a disarmament agreement with Hamas now. And there's mixed feelings. I mean, again, there's weariness here that, okay, we know that whatever they promise they're going to do, they're not going to keep their promise. Israel has seen this time and time again. We know who we're dealing with. But at the same time, we have to deal with Trump and others who want this to happen. And so we will probably go along with it, but we don't trust it at all. At the same time, though, what was it, this last night or even today, there was a report out there that Israel had agreed to stop all activity, all military activity in Gaza. And then that was quickly withdrawn because I woke up this morning and we had been in there again. So having to deal with terrorists. So I don't know. It's hard to know. You see what's being done, and the actions and the words just don't match.
Right. By the way, I want to go back to Lebanon for a second. So Israel, like they blew up tunnels under the ground in southern Lebanon, they blew up a bunch of tunnels around this Beaufort Castle. Mm-hmm. And immediately all the anti-Israel channels were going, oh, Israel's destroying this heritage site that UNESCO's interested in. And now I've seen a drone footage from the IDF that there's nothing happened to Beaufort Castle.
No.
So I don't even know if the walls cracked in this over 1,000-year-old, 1,500-year-old fortress that's there. So we live in the midst of this massive propaganda campaign all the time. So I want to talk a little bit, though, back to the Board of Peace. So let me, I do have the screen up. So this is resolution 2803 that was adopted by the Security Council. And this has within it the provisions of the Board of Peace. And in there, it has a couple of provisions. So it talks about Hamas disarmament. And then Hamas says, well, we won't give up weapons. We'll give up light arms or something. They always think that this is just another ground for negotiation. And even when they say we agree to this, you have to ask yourself, is this a Islamic hudna, which is they make a fake agreement to get you to not do anything. But in there, there's this provision in paragraph 18 of the Board of Peace document from the UN. An interfaith dialogue process will be established based on the values of tolerance and peaceful coexistence to try and change mindsets and narratives of Palestinians. This sounds like something Israelis by emphasizing the benefits that can be derived from peace. And then at the bottom, paragraph 20, the United States will establish a dialogue between Israel and the Palestinians to agree on a political horizon for peaceful and prosperous coexistence. And that means a two-state solution.
It's magical.
So, Brian, you're in Israel. Is that going to happen?
No, I mean, not in a million years. And it's total fiction. it's just absurd. And I mentioned earlier that I interviewed a guy named Major Elliot Hodov about a week or so ago, and he was explaining that the way Islamists negotiate is they are willing to, well, he said what the United States is doing right now is it's trying to do coercive negotiation. So, and Iran knows this. So when we bomb, when we take out what we're trying to get them back to the table to negotiate. And negotiations mean that they are always going to define peace in terms of Islamic peace, which means when Islam says it wants peace, it means it sees a world of peace where everybody is under a caliphate and they are submitting to Allah. That's peace. That's world peace. That's that's how they define peace. Oh, we want peace. We want peace. What do you mean by peace? Peace for them means the whole world becomes submissive to Allah and gives and bends the knee to Him, or they pay a special jizya tax.
The jizya,
yeah. And it's the gamemanship is just ridiculous, and it's very, very wearisome. Which I think you're hearing that word a lot from me today.
Right. And that's why I sort of, with peace, everybody's talking about peace and security and all that thing. That's why I titled this thing today, which I thought was actually kind of clever, putting the pieces together.
Yeah, right.
Play
Isn't there
on
a Bible
intention.
verse that says something about peace?
Yeah. When they say peace and security, then sudden destruction comes, and it's sort of crazy. But I want to talk a little bit. So in Rome this week, there was a meeting, and I don't have time. We would be here forever if I went through everything that I know. But I want to.
I do need to get going here pretty soon, John. So.
Okay, just give me about 5 minutes.
Okay.
To go through this, and because I think this is important for our thing. And if you have to leave, just go ahead and drop out, because I know it's a little bit later there. And let me share screen. So they had a meeting in Rome, and everybody said it was a interfaith dialogue. You know, they had Cardinal Pizzabilla, or the Pizzabilla, the Latin patriarch from Jerusalem, was there. And all these guys were there.
Did Pizzabella come with pepperoni or not?
I don't know. I think it. I don't know. Maybe it had extra sauce or something. I know he's not necessarily the most popular person across different communities there in Jerusalem, but the Latin patriarch. But anyway. So here, the statement was released by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs expresses the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's welcome regarding the historic agreement related to the disarmament in the Gaza Strip, and we commend him. And then they put up a thing about what the foreign minister said when he was there. And the foreign minister, Prince Faisal, went to Rome, and he said the kingdom also affirms the importance of the complete withdrawal of the Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip, the deployment of the International Stabilization Force, and ensuring the continued flow of humanitarian aid. And then he says the kingdom affirms Security Council Resolution 2803, which I don't think they had done before, that the return of the Palestinian Authority to the Gaza Strip and the preservation of the unity of the occupied Palestinian territory are fundamental to the successful implementation of the comprehensive peace plan and to ensure the achievement of stability and lasting peace. And so they're saying, then they go on and say, this is leading to the two-state solution, a Palestinian state. And this is the public statements that the government of Saudi Arabia makes. So, any comments on that, Brian, before you got to go?
Again, ludicrous. No one here believes in a two-state solution. And again, when they say that peace and harmony will come, that means Israel no longer exists. Israel is back and is cast from the river to the sea. So a two-state solution is just one step toward a river, sending all of Israel out and taking back the whole thing. And that's the whole strategy. We know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. It's
Right.
the West plays this game like, oh, everybody else is defining peace the way we define peace. Get along. We tolerate each other's differences of opinion and beliefs, and we all get along, and that's okay. That's not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with Islamism, and Islamists, their only definition of peace is submission to Allah. And the eventual, maybe long term, they're willing to play a very, very, very long game. They've been doing this for over 1,000 years, and they're continuing to play this game of conquering the world for Islam. That's what they're doing. That's peace. We know that.
Right. So I do have one more question I want to ask you, Brian. So the other day you interviewed, what was the position that this guy used to have?
He's a major in the reserve, Israeli reserves, Major Elliot Chodov. And he lives right up he lives up north near Carmiel, very close to the border with Lebanon.
Okay, so the IDSF the other day had on the author of this article, Maurice Hirsch.
Yeah.
And I think this is, there'll be a link in the show notes to this and a bunch of other things that we didn't have anywhere near time to get to. And I don't know if you talked to him about this, about the security situation in Judea, Samaria, the West Bank. Did that come up in your interview with him, or am I mixing a couple up?
We didn't really go there.
Okay. So you live down there. Is this an issue? So this is Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, an article by Maurice Hirsch. He was interviewed on IDSF like the day you released your interview with this colonel. I will tell you, it was frightening because he talks about this the Palestinian Authority's massive army. Under Oslo, they were supposed to get 12,000 policemen. They now have 70,000, and they're armed soldiers with troop carriers and everything. Is this something that you're concerned about?
Of course. I tend to be skeptical of the numbers, however, and of the real threat that is posed. Israel is so thoroughly involved in everything that happens in Judea and Samaria that I find it difficult, just from my own looking at this, I find it really difficult to believe that this poses a threat that the title of this article states is there. There's an ongoing threat. There always is an ongoing threat of a problem with the Palestinian Authority and Palestinians who are now, they are suffering a lot of economic troubles. They're not getting gas. I mean, gasoline, they can't, there's not cash, and people are having trouble just buying gas for their cars. And so taxis and this eventually foments more unrest. And it's one of the catch-22s I think Israel finds itself in. After 7 October 2023, most Palestinians that came across the border to work no longer can come in. So they lost, a lot of people lost their livelihoods. And these are not people who were necessarily antagonistic to Israel. They didn't love Israel, but they were, they depended on it for and as long as they're able to live and pay the bills, then that is conducive to at least a toleration between both sides. But when you got one side that's being just destroyed economically, in this case, the Palestinians, and not because of Israel, but because of the Palestinian behavior, it creates a problem. I'd have to study this. I haven't seen that. It hasn't, what this article, what this headline saying is not something that is in the news here in terms of in major publications. So I'm not seeing it. I'm kind of surprised it's such a strong statement. Yes, there are always security threats, and the IDF goes in to what the world calls the West Bank all the time. It does operations and they have done it intensely ever since 7 October. They have made sure that this was not going to be another front that opened up against them from the east. So and they're constantly going in, taking away arms, illegal arms. I I need to look at this more closely. I don't think it's as bad as what this article seems to indicate.
Okay, I'll send you the interview that our friend Moshe Davis did at IDSF with the
Yeah.
author, and I think I'm concerned about it, but who knows? It's always an issue. But I know there was some conflict between Jewish, we call them settlers. They're called settlers.
Oh, yes.
And
that's a problem.
Palestinians. It's a big problem, but when it got to a certain level, Israel went in and like arrested like 70 people in Samaria, I think it was.
Right.
And it just seems like there's always a tension under there that
always. Oh,
erupt.
it could explode any time, and that's always the case. It's always. So
anyway, Brian, I'm going to let you go because I know you got some things to do. Thanks for joining us today, and I'll put a link to your interview in the show notes.
Yeah, great.
As soon as I look it up, and I'm going to repost this without some of the pauses and that type of thing. I have a program that allow me to cut a lot of that out. So look for it under the live tab, but I'll post it under the videos tab on Fellowship Bible Chapel's YouTube channel. And so, Brian, I'll let you go, and you can
right. Thank you.
Get your dinner or whatever. Thanks so much for joining
Mark.
us. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Okay, Mark, we'll finish up here. Any final thoughts from you?
I think what Brian was saying about that article, I think that's one of the reasons why that interview was done, which was to raise awareness and to have that discussion about it, because I think it is a concern. It also brings up wonderfully that whole other discussion of Oslo, all the three areas, what was reached, what they were supposed to have, what they were not allowed to do. And I think that's why that interview was done, John, to raise all those issues.
Yeah, I personally think it's an issue. It's something I've been concerned about for a very long time. And it's just interesting because depending on where you live, sometimes in Israel, you have a different view of things because the situation is a little bit differently. And I'm not saying Brian's blind to any of that. He's well aware of everything that goes on. There was a great video put up this week. I think it's so hard to remember because it's like, it was 3 days ago. It seems like it was a month ago.
I hear you.
But Yishai Fleischer put up a video. He went down with his daughter, Leah, to Solomon's pools that sit between Efrat and the southern part of Bethlehem, and they're restoring them. And it's a site from the first, second temple periods where the water came from Hebron and elsewhere, and then it was an ingenious piping system to get it to flow down to the Temple Mount, where these massive, I think 45 or 7 giant cisterns have been discovered around the Temple Mount, and their mikvahs, ritual places where they would cleanse themselves before they go to the temple, Pool Siloam. It's just absolutely insane. So I would encourage people to go to Yishai Fleischer's channel and watch that video. It's a very interesting interview. This is where I took my tour down. We didn't go down to Solomon's pools, but we were above it with the guy that Yishai spends time interviewing. And there's a lot of development in that area down there. There's so much going on. I don't even know how to begin to discuss it. It's like there's a lot happening, but yeah, there's a lot happening, and it's happening all at once. So what are you watching where you are? I know you're working on a transgender video with Dr. Dr. Melanie
Kreisbacher. Yeah, that will end up being a series. So there's so much stuff. Plus, there's going to be a UK shoot in regard to that. So we're just.
Do you have a website for that?
Imageunshaken.com. Thank you, John. Imageunshaken.com. Please go there. If you want to donate, that would be amazing. But also, if you've got spare prayer time, pray about that, because this is a huge issue on both sides of the pond that we are facing. And again, John, thank you, because you interviewed us both a couple of months ago to discuss that subject. Also, people can follow me on the Sutherland Report. And I've just put up an interesting video where I was interviewing a lady where we were talking about satanic panic and all that historically in regard to America and satanic ritual abuse. So Mary Jo is a counselor, Dr. Mary Jo. So that was an interesting discussion, John. And just to say, listen, my friend, it's been fantastic to join you over the last few weeks, and I and others are looking forward to you being back at the podium with your wonderful producers and being able to speak from Fellowship Bible Chapel. So we're looking forward to seeing you and getting back there.
Yeah, thanks. So I get my cast off on Thursday at 1:10 p.m., but who's counting, right?
Right. Will it be a filmed event, or will it
I
just
don't know,
be
but it'll be and I'm not exactly going to be dancing my way out of there. I've already received instruction from my personal nurse.
Yeah.
Nurse Ratchet, as we call her lovingly around the house sometimes. Take it easy. I will be in a boot for about a month.
Right.
And it's so I haven't walked on my leg for 6 weeks. And not very well for about 3 months. And so it could be a relearning process. So pray that I keep my balance and everything. So hopefully back in the saddle at Fellowship Bible Chapel next Sunday. Appreciate everybody. Mark, thanks so much for your help over the last few weeks.
It's been great.
And everybody, just pay attention to what's going on. Like, share, subscribe. If you haven't, that does help. I think we get sort of throttled by YouTube. Because I try not to sensationalize things. I try to be reasonable. I try to be grounded and that type of thing. So I would say this, pay attention to the Middle East, pay attention to Israel, pay attention to Turkey, and then pay attention to some of the cultural things that are going on that Mark's dealing with. ImageUnshaken.com. Be sure to follow that and the Sutherland Report. And I'll put a link to Brian's channel where he posts his videos. The interview he did this week with this colonel was just absolutely phenomenal. And so I'm trying to arrange other interviews with people in Israel and elsewhere. I've been kind of taking a little time off from that. I do have a video that should be released, I think Tuesday, Wednesday at Worldview Matters with David Fiorazo on some subjects. We did the Technocracy Roundtable the other night with the usual guys. And I appreciate everybody for spending the time and everything. I know that it's really hard. It's hard for me to keep this to an hour and a half. And then when I add somebody in to keep it to 2 hours is almost impossible with everything going on in the world. So we do appreciate it, and keep everybody in prayer. Make sure you fellowship with other believers. Find good groups to be in, because I think we're going to need that in the days, weeks, and months ahead. So, Mark, I will say goodbye to you in a moment. Everybody, thank you for listening, and God bless. Thanks.